Hi everybody, thanks for your time here today. We're going to talk a little bit about counterfeit devices and the threat to cybersecurity as a result of them. So my name is Ronan Cremin. I work with a company called Afilias. Just by way of introduction, I think it will help you to understand where we're coming from if you can see what we've been doing. So Afilias is an internet infrastructure company. We run a large chunk of the global DNS system, and as such, we have a lot of experience in scalability, security, and availability. But we also have a device intelligence arm, and for the last 12 years or so, we have been providing real-time device intelligence to quite a lot of the brands that you guys work with today, or the brands that you use today. DeviceAssure is a real-time repository of connected devices and their capabilities. So that's the background. Some of the customers that we work with, 6 of the top 6 operators in the States are direct customers of ours. We have 20% of the Fortune 100 as direct customers and many more as indirect customers. And we process trillions of requests per month. There's trillions of intelligence events per month. On the right-hand side of the slide, you can see some of our customers. In the analytics space, we underpin Adobe and Nielsen. In the media space, Netflix is a customer, Financial Times, and many more. In the ad tech space, we're involved in pretty much all of the RTB transactions, both on the demand side and the sell side. So we power quite a lot of those companies as well. And finally, in retail, we power Amazon, PayPal, eBay, Flipkart, and a bunch of other retail platforms. So we have a good deal of experience in the device intelligence world. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. So without further ado, I'm going to show you some real counterfeit devices so that you can get a sense for what they're like. So I'm going to switch over to my camera here. Hopefully it works. Great. So here are 2 iPhones. One is real, one is fake. It can be hard to tell the difference. So just looking at the boxes, first of all, they're basically perfect. Note the size is identical. They've got the little raised, embossed picture of the iPhone with a little bit of silver paint. If we turn over the boxes, you see the iPhone logos on the side, as you'd expect. And on the back, you've got the regulatory information and the product details. So pretty much identical boxes for the real and the fake. So I'm going to put one of them aside and open up I think this is the fake one. We'll see now in a minute. So if you were an unwitting customer at this point, you would have no idea that you've just been duped. There's no tell whatsoever that you can recognize at this point to say that this device is counterfeit. You see, designed by Apple in California. It's a counterfeit phone, but I guess that technically is true. Apple did design it. They didn't make it, but they designed it. So you've got your welcome pack here, including the little SIM removal key. Let's have a look at the device. So first of all, note the headphones, the charger, absolutely perfect. The headphone case is absolutely perfect. Charger is as you'd expect. And here's the device. So, excuse the fingerprints, it's kind of smudgy. So it looks exactly like a real iPhone 10. On the side, you've got your volume buttons, your mute switch. On the other side, you've got the power, the SIM tray. It's even got the little dividers between the antenna lines on the top and bottom. On the top, there's nothing, as you'd expect. On the bottom, you see the lightning port and the speaker grill. Turning over the back, you've got your 2 cameras and your flash and your logo. And just by way of comparison, here's a real device. There's essentially no difference. Even in the hand, the weight and the feel of it. In fact, they're so good that occasionally, when I'm leaving work in a hurry, I grab the wrong device and only find out when I get home, which is really annoying. So that's an iPhone 10. So let's have a look at another iPhone. I have Apple's flagship device here. This is a 10s Max. Again, the box is perfect. Is it focused? All of the details are there as you would expect. Now let's have a look at the device inside. Again, you're welcome to Apple, your getting started guide. Here's the device. Before I show you the device, I'm just going to show you just how perfect the details are. Check out the cable is coiled exactly as Apple do it. It's every detail is perfect, little cardboard bits. So everything is perfect. Let's put the box away and we'll turn on the device. So this is an iPhone XS Max. I'm going to turn off the light. Is that better? Yeah. You can't really see this on the camera, but the screen on this device is perfect. The colors are really bright. The resolution's excellent. And again, at this point, the unwitting customer would have no idea that this device is fake. There's nothing to give it away just yet. All of the apps are there. You see even Apple Health is there. The messaging app, Safari, everything that you'd expect to be here is here. But here's the amazing thing. This device is running Android. It's kind of hard to tell, but it's Android. And just to give you a sense of the depth of the industry behind this thing, I'm going to run one app. Most people don't realize this, but all iPhones have a Compass app. And here's the Compass app on this fake iPhone. Looks like it's working, right? Looks perfect. But here's the thing. This device does not have in it the sensor that is required to build a compass. That is entirely faked. So if I turn it around, it's still pointing the same way. So this gives you, I'll take questions after if you don't mind. This gives you a sense of the depth of the industry behind this device. This is not a small operation. Is it focused? Even a minor app like the Compass has been faked completely. So there's a serious depth of industry behind this. If you look at the device itself, the fit and finish is excellent. In the hand, it feels exactly like a real iPhone does. There's nothing to give it away. The weight, everything. So that's iPhone. As you might expect, there are similar, better or worse? There are similar products in the Android space. So here's the Galaxy Note 8, which is fake. The box is exactly as you'd expect a Samsung box to be. If I open it up, we see the device inside. You've got your getting started guide, quick start guide, the device itself. But before we get to the device, I'll just note that under the tray, there's the charger, headphones, and charging cable, as you might expect. Let's put the box away and show you the Android device. So again, you can't really see this on the camera, but the screen on this device is pretty spectacular. It's a perfectly good, curvy. It's exactly the screen that you'd expect to find on this device. Home screen, perfect reproduction of a standard Samsung home screen. All of the, oops, wrong icon. Let me swipe again. All of the the Samsung apps are there, the Samsung browser, Samsung Health, everything is there as if it's a real Samsung phone. And even if I swipe in from the left, we've got Bixby. So they've even faked Bixby, which is probably a bad idea. And on the side of the phone, you've got all the buttons that you'd expect, the Bixby button, volume, power. On the back, you have the dual cameras and the fingerprint sensor. So a perfect physical reproduction. I'm going to show you just one more device to give you a sense of the range of counterfeit devices that are out there. This is a counterfeit Nokia 3310. You could claim that it's not technically a counterfeit because it's not actually saying Nokia on it, but it's clearly using Nokia's trade dress, and it's a counterfeit of a Nokia phone. So that gives you a sense of the spectrum of devices that are available. So I'm going to switch back to the presentation now, and we'll dive into more details. That was the unboxing. So, problem overview. So we all know that there are fake Rolexes, there are fake Prada handbags, but if you think about it, these are luxury goods as well. And it stands to reason that there will be fake smartphones out there. But people keep asking us, how big is this problem? Is it really something that I need to care about? It kind of feels like a faraway thing that it doesn't really matter to us. So here are the numbers. The EU has an intellectual property office that studies these kind of things. They have estimated that there were 45 billion euros, or dollars, kind of the same, lost to counterfeit sales in 2015. And almost certainly that number has gone up since. So that means that legitimate manufacturers lost that amount of money to counterfeit sales in 2015. And that represents 13% of all legitimate sales. In the EU alone, the numbers are 4 billion euro and 8% of all legitimate sales. Separately, the OECD has estimated that 1 in 5 mobile phones sold online is fake. So these are enormous numbers by anybody's standards. The reports that I refer to here are public. You can download them from our website or from the OECD or EU IPO websites. So these are really, really big numbers, clearly, but still there's a kind of a sense that this is a faraway problem, that it doesn't matter for us here. But it kind of does. So we've been scanning headlines for the last 6 months or so, and here are some headlines that are very much in our backyard. This is Oregon, this is Idaho, this is New York City. This is right in our backyard here. And just this year, I think in April or March, some college students in Oregon sent back fake iPhones to Apple for full refund and did it thousands of times before they were caught. So even Apple was fooled by the quality of the counterfeit devices. They were caught eventually, but it worked for a while. So these are stories that are very much in the backyard. This is all here in America. So this is an everywhere problem. It's not a faraway country problem. So where do people get these devices and how much do they cost? First of all, pricing. Every device you saw there today was $80 or less. So the devices are typically priced about 10 times less than the real equivalent. So there is a serious bargain. They are unlocked, so they work with any SIM card. You buy them, put in any SIM card, and they will work. So where do people get them? There's a few different channels. One channel is direct sales from online stores. So there are online marketplaces where you can buy these that specialize in these devices, where you can just go and buy them. Secondly, and perhaps more sinisterly, there are marketplaces on large retailers where these devices are sold also. So you may not realize it, but Amazon, AliExpress, Flipkart, they all support the concept of a merchant setting themselves up to sell their goods within the broader platform and tearing down again afterwards. So you can set up your store, sell a few thousand devices, and disappear. So there are marketplaces on large retail platforms that are used to sell these devices. And finally, many of them show up on classified ad services like Craigslist and the equivalent in various countries. So oftentimes people will buy them in bulk on a marketplace from AliExpress, say, buy 50, sell them locally in Craigslist at a significant markup. So all of these are linked together. So I'll show you one retail experience. This is a real screenshot from an online store that specializes in counterfeit phones. So this is the listing of their offerings, and right at the top is the phone that you saw before, the iPhone XS Max. Let's click into that and see what they report about it. So this is the details for the XS Max that we saw before. There's a few things that are worth calling out about this page. First of all, the title. These guys are openly admitting that this device is fake. It says, show fake 4G. So what they're saying is that supposedly 4G phone is actually a 3G phone. And the reason they're saying this probably is because this site is aiming at resellers. They're going to sell these phones to a guy locally here in the States who then sells them on at a profit, but it's important that he knows that the 4G thing is fake. This empowers him to sell more smartly. So they're openly admitting that the 4G aspect is fake. Secondly, look at the price, between $80 and $100, depending on how many you buy. The store is set up to sell 1 or 30 or 50 or 1,000. They don't care. Individuals or resellers, they don't mind. And finally, free shipping anywhere in the world via DHL. So this is kind of important because even though this might seem like a dodgy Chinese e-commerce store, they're using a trusted shipping provider that takes a lot of the risk out of it. So this device will turn up in 3 or 4 days in your home via DHL. So in summary, this is really a first-class retail experience. This is like Amazon or any of the large e-commerce stores. It's a really good experience. It doesn't seem that risky. It's $80. Why not try? When we started this project, we thought that the devices, much like in the handbags and watches space, that it would be Prada and Rolex. But actually, we found that every device is counterfeited. If it sells, it will be counterfeited. You saw the Nokia device. The real version of that device was just $45 or 45 euros. The counterfeit is 15 euros. So even cheap devices are being counterfeited. We're seeing mid-range Samsung phones. We're seeing Chinese brands being counterfeited. It's not just Samsung and Apple. It's everything. If it sells, it will be copied. But this is a security conference, so why are we talking about counterfeit phones? Well, it turns out there's quite a big impact from these devices. And the impacts cover quite a broad range of constituents, and we'll look at them one by one. First of all, enterprises. These are a completely unmonitored security risk. We'll find out why in a minute, but nobody is watching for these devices, but they should. So these devices will lead to an elevated exposure to corporate cybersecurity risks, and it's pretty serious, as we'll see. Secondly, they impact the actual end users, the subscribers. The same issues apply. There's a significant cybersecurity risk, and oftentimes the purchase of one of these devices will lead to a whole journey of issues down the road, and we'll see why in a minute. App makers need to be aware of these too. If you're running an app on one of these devices, it is not safe. Any data that app stores cannot be assumed to be safe. It is completely at risk, and we'll show you why in a minute. And not only is the data in the app unsafe, anything that you talk to should be considered at risk as well. And finally, governments. For all the same reasons, if you walk into a government building with one of these phones and you connect to the Wi-Fi, there will be trouble. It's not a good scenario for anybody. So these are the people who are affected by these devices, and we'll see why in a moment. So we saw the devices. We saw that they're physically perfect. That I often say that they're millimeter perfect, but actually they're way better than that. They're like 1/10 of a millimeter perfect. The dimensions, the boxes even open the way that the real boxes open, like the Apple one opens kind of slowly. And the fit and finish is excellent. The screens are great. Packaging is indistinguishable. Everything that you'd expect to be in the box is in the box. So physically, these devices are perfect. So how come they can be sold for $80 versus $1,300 for the real one? It turns out that the cost savings are made internally. So here you'll see excuse me, these are the constituent components of a typical smartphone. And the counterfeiters make gains across the board here. So within a smartphone, there's a chip called the system on a chip that implements essentially everything that the phone does. There's the CPU, the GPU. Every single component of functionality that can be put on one piece of silicon is put on the system on a chip. And in the case of the counterfeits, they will use a significantly underpowered, older system on a chip. So typically, you're getting a 2015 era smartphone wrapped up in a shiny 2019 case. So big savings are made there. Secondly, the screens, I said they're good, but they're not quite as good. The resolution won't be as good, the refresh rate won't be as good, so there are gains to be made there as well. A modern smartphone has at least 2 cameras, often as many as 4. They use cheaper camera modules, and there are big gains to be made there. We saw from the screenshot of the e-commerce store, the connectivity options offered by these devices are typically a generation behind the real thing. So instead of 4G, it'll be 3G, or instead of 5G, it will be 4G. And that applies to the Wi-Fi also. The antenna design is really bad, so the devices listen poorly and transmit weakly on the cellular network. So they're bad network citizens that cause support problems. The batteries are much worse. They tend to give up after a much shorter time than the real ones. There are fake fingerprint sensors. So you saw all the devices I had here. They had fingerprint sensors. They're completely fake. They will respond to any touch from your elbow would work just fine. So they have fake fingerprint sensors. And finally, there's some missing components. So you saw the iPhone. It had a faked compass. That's because it was missing the magnetometer that you need to actually really implement a compass. A modern smartphone has about 30 plus different sensors. A smartphone will have much fewer. So this is the hardware side. So on the hardware side, you can save money by leaving stuff out and using lower spec components. On the software side, you can make money by adding things, and this is where it turns into a security story. So every device that you saw here was running Android, but they're running a really heavily modified version of Android. Typically, it's Android 4.4 or maybe 5, but masked to look like something else. In this case, iOS or the Samsung version of Android. So there's some serious skinning going on. The Android distributions that these devices use deliberately misreport multiple characteristics to pretend that they're something they're not. And critically, pre-installed malware is routine. We had a New York-based security company called Trail of Bits analyze a bunch of counterfeit phones. They found malware on every single one, and really bad stuff. We'll talk about this more. So on the software side, you're getting more than you bargained for. So this leads to all sorts of security concerns, which is the focus of this conference. So let's go through the different aspects, and we'll see what's inside. So on the malware side, as I said, these devices have unremovable pre-installed malware. every single one that we've looked at. And at one end of the scale, it seems fairly benign. It's adware that pops up over any app that you're using, but it goes all the way to the other end. You've got keyloggers, remote access trojans, DDoS hosts, ransomware, command and control servers, you name it, it's all in these phones. So those phones you saw here today have all of this stuff inside, pre-installed. So as far as we can tell, malware is part of the business model. We believe that the model is that somebody's paying for these devices for this malware to be put on the devices, and it's a way to improve the margins for the manufacturer, because every single one has had something on it. So that's one aspect. But the other security aspect is that these devices are an unsafe platform for apps also. Most apps today will query the phone to see what it is and simply believe that that's true, which is an incredibly naive stance to take in 2019. These Android distributions deliberately misreport things. They've got keyloggers on board. So any app that you run on these devices has to be considered at risk. And anything that app talks to has to be considered at risk too. Every aspect of these Android distributions has been customized. Things are being intercepted. You cannot assume that they're safe. And what we like to say is that good apps don't run on bad platforms. If you don't believe that the platform that your app is running on is safe, you should shut down. The next security aspect is, I should have drawn attention to it when I was showing the devices, there's a completely parallel app ecosystem on board these devices. The Apple devices that you saw, they have an app store, but it's not the Apple App Store. It's an app store that looks like the Apple App Store, full of apps of completely unknown origin. You will find everything that you want in there. They have Facebook, they have everything that you would want, as you see in the screenshot. And they do work, but you don't know what else they're doing. The provenance of these apps is completely unknown. A lot of them require really unusual permissions for what they're claiming to do. So suspect apps are routine. There's a parallel app ecosystem. The devices have pre-installed versions of Facebook, WhatsApp as well. And again, they work, but who knows what's inside. So suspect apps are routine. Another aspect of user security is the physical security. As I mentioned, these devices have fake fingerprint sensors, fake Face ID, and really, really old Android distributions that have had hundreds of security vulnerabilities fixed since. If you think about it, Android 4.4 was 2015. Hundreds, if not thousands, of critical security vulnerabilities have been fixed since then. You get none of these with these devices. So user data is at risk. And all of this leads to an enterprise security story as well. Many companies use MDM solutions to manage their fleet of mobile devices. We have tested the top 3 or 4 of these. They're completely oblivious to the idea of counterfeits. They simply trust that the devices are what they say they are, which is, again, seems really naive. The iPhone here says, I'm an iPhone, an MDM solution will say, okay, you're an iPhone, that looks fine. So they will give these devices a clean bill of health, even though they're a huge security risk. So enterprise data is at risk. The screenshot here shows the consoles of some different MDM solutions managing some counterfeit phones. They're saying everything's fine. And all of this leads to kind of an enterprise scenario. You can imagine if you're an enterprise, you have an MDM solution to manage your devices. You have a second factor authentication app to manage logins. A guy who buys a counterfeit phone at the weekend off Craigslist gets a great deal, walks into work on Monday morning, it will sail right through all of those defenses, and there's keyloggers on board, and you're completely at risk. So what seems like a button-down system is wide open to counterfeit devices. And as we say, trust is not a security strategy. You should not trust that a device is what it says it is. This is 2019. You can't trust things anymore. So putting all this together, counterfeit devices have to be considered a hostile platform. Malware is part of the business model. They're an unsafe platform for apps. There's a parallel app ecosystem. User data is at risk. These devices hurt every single thing that they touch. So what can be done about it? We're here to talk about a solution. How can you find these devices and weed them out? To think about the solution here, you have to consider what a smartphone is made of. So at the bottom, a smartphone has 3 layers of functionality. At the bottom, you've got the hardware, the CPU, the GPU, the screen, the camera. On top of that, you have an operating system running, typically Android or iOS. And on top of that, again, you have apps like the web browser and so on. But each of these layers of the device makes claims of identity. On the hardware side, You've got the TAC. The device has an IMEI, which is in effect a serial number for the device. There are MAC addresses for the Wi-Fi chip and for the Bluetooth chip. At the operating system layer, there are claims of identity also. All these devices will claim to be something as reported by the operating system. And finally, at the app layer, the browser identifies the device type as well. So a smartphone today makes multiple claims of identity. If you then combine that with deep hardware inspection, modern smartphones have thousands upon thousands of properties and behaviors. These can be probed really quickly without interfering with the user and without capturing any personally identifying information. So we can do a deep dive into the device, inspect the hardware, make it do things, check what happens, and pull all the results together. So then if you combine all of this data, the claims of identity with the probed behaviors, and compare against a set of reference profiles, if something doesn't line up, we know that something's wrong. We've been cataloging phones for 12 years. We have 63,000 different models and vendors. So we like to think that we know every phone that exists on the planet. We add 50 per day. There are literally 50 new models every single day. So this gives us a reference set of known good data that we can check against. We check what the device is claiming to be. We measure things. We compare against a reference profile. So the actual implementation of this looks like this. So take a smartphone. On that smartphone, you have an app running or a website on display. We supply a little module that goes into our library that goes into the native app or can be added to a website. Once the website is on display or the app is running, we do a deep dive into the hardware. We pick up some results, send them to our cloud APIs. A analysis is performed. The result gets sent back to the device or to a location of your choosing. So at that point, the app now knows, or a third location now knows, whether the device is real or fake. And it's up to then our customer to decide what to do with that. It's not our call. We don't want to touch the customer. We just want to provide the intelligence for the app maker or the website maker to do whatever they want. This all takes about a second. So it's really quick. The user doesn't see it. And again, no personally identifying information is required. So it's worth thinking a bit about the results. You might think that all devices will be either real or fake, but it turns out it's not that simple. The classification goes like this. At one end of the scale, you've got authentic, which means that the device's claims of identity match what its hardware looks like to us. At the far end of the scale, you've got counterfeit, which technically means designed to deceive. It is actively trying to deceive the user. But there are a few classifications in between. So, for example, oftentimes phones are stolen, and when a phone is stolen, one of the typical things that's done is it's laundered, and it's laundered by changing the serial number, or the IMEI, to a different number, and it could be a randomly chosen number, and that kind of messes up the claims of identity of the phone. So there are reasons for kind of intermediate classifications. There are a couple of others that I won't get into right now, but it's not always a binary thing. Most devices will fall into one or other, but there are some intermediate classifications too. So I'm going to give you just really quickly a couple of use cases where all of this could be applied. If you take a banking app, a mobile banking app on a phone, you really, really don't want such a thing running on a fake phone because, keyloggers, backdoors, everything. So a way to implement a consumer security protection use case would be when the banking app runs for the first time, you run DeviceAssure, you check if the device is real or not. If it's real, you let everything go ahead as before. If it's not, you should probably signal to the user, this device doesn't look like what we think it should look like. It's not safe for you to continue. We're going to shut down. So for your protection, we're going to shut down. So this is a very simple use case for a data-intensive or an important app where you shut down to protect the user. Another use case is enterprise security assurance. As I mentioned before, no MDM or EMM solution that we know of actually checks that the devices are what they say they are. And if you think about it, that means that all bets are off. If you don't even know that the platform you're running on is real, you cannot trust anything else. So if you add DeviceAssure to an MDM solution, you can at least check that the device looks to be authentic. That can be reported back to the administration console. You can apply whatever policy you like based on intelligence and decide what to do. So this is a way to add security assurance to an enterprise situation. A quick slide on status. This is a commercially available solution, and we're working with performance measuring companies, device recycling management companies, enterprise security companies, app development companies, and telecom regulators. All of these people have an interest in knowing if devices are real or not. We also work with the Mobile and Wireless Forum. This is a trade body of mobile manufacturers, the GSMA, which is the issuing authority for all mobile devices worldwide, and we're also working with the ITU to kind of bring some oversight to this whole area. So I'm just going one more slide. I'm going to sum up. Counterfeits are very much here. They're getting easier to purchase and harder to spot. But there are three parallel trends that are making this whole thing much more serious. The devices are getting really, really good. I mean, as you saw, they're indistinguishable. An unwitting customer will have no idea what they've just been sold or what they just bought. When we started this project a few years ago, the devices were really quite bad. They were clearly counterfeit, and they didn't work that well. So the devices are getting really good. They're getting much easier to buy. You can buy these on Amazon, Flipkart, AliExpress, loads of Craigslist, wherever you want. They're getting really easy to get. And finally, they're really, really dangerous. These devices are so dangerous that when we have a separate Wi-Fi network in our company that they can connect to, we debug them on air-gapped PCs. They're absolutely lethal, so they're getting much more dangerous. So counterfeits are here. Can you afford not to know? As we say, don't trust. You should actually verify. You should verify that the device is what it says it is. So that's it. Thank you for your time.